Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Rain drumming on the window pane. Lilith reclined on her couch, her pose almost casual were it not for the tension emanating from her. Boot-clad feet perched on the distressed coffee table conveyed her nonchalant attitude, as did her casual apparel. The apartment welcomed the muted daylight, creating an interplay of shadow and light. The slamming entrance and soaking presence of her housemate momentarily claimed her attention from the drawing she was perfecting. "The dice don't lie," she asserted, her voice laced with merriment. "I said you'd regret it if you lost, and there's no more graceful escape." Elias, defeated, dripped rainwater onto the worn hardwood floor. His blonde hair betrayed his anguish. A bad hair day indeed. "Don't tell me you're backing out now." "I didn't think you were serious about the—" Elias gestured vaguely, unable to fully articulate what they'd agreed upon during that night of too many drinks and a reckless poker game. "The Gothic makeover. Of course I was serious." Lilith swung her legs off the table and stood, her black dress swishing around her knees. "Look, it's just for a few hours. Nobody will even know it's you." Elias sighed, hanging his damp denim jacket on the hook by the door. His white t-shirt clung to his lean frame, still slightly damp from the unexpected downpour. "Fine. When do you want to do this?" "No time like the present," Lilith said, already moving toward her bedroom. "I've got everything ready." The tiny apartment they shared had seemed like a perfect arrangement when Elias had answered her ad for a roommate 6 months ago. They were both 25, both creative. He wrote music, she studied photography, and both needed to split the rent. What he hadn't anticipated was Lilith's enthusiasm for pushing boundaries, especially his. "This is ridiculous," Elias muttered, following her into her room, which looked like a hot topic had exploded inside it. Posters of bands he'd never heard of covered the walls, and her clothes, all black, purple, and deep red, spilled out of her closet. Art is never ridiculous. Lilith was already rummaging through garment bags laid out on her bed. "Trust me, these photos are going to be amazing. My professor will eat it up. Gender deconstruction through Gothic aesthetics. Is that what we're calling it?" Elias leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed over his chest. "I thought we were calling it Elias loses a bet and has to dress like a girl." Lilith rolled her eyes. "That's such a reductive way to look at it. This is about transformation, about revealing hidden facets of identity." She pulled out a black lace dress with purple accents, holding it up. "This should fit you. You're skinny enough." Elias stared at the dress, something unexpected stirring in his chest. "I don't know the first thing about any of this." "That's why you have me." Lilith laid the dress on the bed and moved to her vanity, which was crowded with makeup products. "Now go shower. I need you clean-shaven." 45 minutes later, Elias sat stiffly on a stool in Lilith's bedroom, freshly showered, his skin smelling of her lavender soap. He wore the black lace dress, which fell to mid-thigh, revealing legs he'd never really paid much attention to before. Platform boots with metal buckles added inches to his height, and fingerless lace gloves covered his hands. "Stop fidgeting!" Lilith commanded, wielding an eyeliner pencil with the precision of a surgeon. "Close your eyes." Elias obeyed, feeling the strange sensation of the pencil gliding along his eyelid. "How did I let you talk me into this?" "You didn't. You lost at poker. That's what happens when you bluff with a pair of threes." Lilith's breath was warm against his face as she concentrated. "Besides, I can tell you're not hating this as much as you pretend. What's that supposed to mean? Elias kept his eyes closed, afraid to see her expression. Nothing. She moved on to the other eye. You've just got this look on your face, like you're discovering something. Was he? Elias wasn't sure what was happening inside him. There was something about the weight of the fabric against his skin, the strange vulnerability of being made up this way that felt not wrong at all. Almost done. Lilith stepped back to assess her work. Now for the lipstick. The dark purple shade she chose completed the look. When she finally allowed him to look in the mirror, Elias couldn't speak. The person staring back wasn't him, or was, but somehow more. The smudged eyeliner made his blue eyes look larger, more expressive. The dark lipstick contrasted with his fair skin. The black choker around his neck drew attention to his jawline, which looked softer somehow. What do you think? Lilith asked, watching his reaction carefully. Elias couldn't find the words. It's different. Lilith smiled, seeing something in his face he couldn't articulate. Let's take some photos before the light changes. She positioned him by the window, where the rain created a dramatic backdrop. The camera clicked and whirred as she circled, directing him to tilt his chin, look away, look back, part his lips slightly. These are going to be incredible, she murmured, reviewing the shots. You're a natural. Can I see? Elias asked, surprised by his own curiosity. Lilith handed him the camera. The images on the small screen took his breath away. Was that really him? The lighting cast shadows that accentuated the hollows of his cheeks, the curve of his neck. The person in the photos looked mysterious, alluring, powerful in a way Elias had never felt before. I need a few more in the living room, Lilith said, already moving equipment. The contrast between you and that beat-up leather couch will be perfect. Elias followed, aware of how differently he had to move in the boots, how the dress swished around his thighs. By the time they finished the shoot, 3 hours had passed, and something fundamental had shifted inside him. These turned out even better than I hoped, Lilith said later that evening, scrolling through the edited photos on her laptop. Mind if I post a few on my art page? I won't tag you if you don't want. Elias hesitated. He'd removed the makeup and changed back into his jeans and t-shirt, but the feeling of transformation lingered. Go ahead, he said finally. Like you said, nobody will know it's me. But that night, lying in bed, Elias couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that reflection, the version of himself that had emerged in Lilith's mirror. That person had felt real in a way he couldn't explain, like discovering a room in a house he'd lived in his whole life, but somehow never noticed. The photos went viral overnight on Lilith's art page. Comments poured in, praising the composition, the lighting, the striking model with the haunting eyes. Elias read them all, a strange pride blooming in his chest. You've become quite the internet sensation, Lilith remarked over breakfast 3 days later, sliding her phone across the table to show him the latest stats. My professor gave me an A, by the way, said it was my most honest work yet. Elias nodded, pushing cereal around his bowl. He hadn't been able to stop thinking about the photo shoot, about how it had felt to be transformed. What's going on in that head of yours? Lilith asked, studying him. You've been quiet ever since. Elias met her gaze. I think I want to try it again. Lilith raised an eyebrow. The photo shoot? No. Well, yes, maybe. But I mean... He struggled to find the words. I want to explore that feeling. The person I saw in those photos. Understanding dawned on Lilith's face. Elias, I've never felt right, in my own skin. Like I was always performing, but never the role I was meant to play. The words rushed out now that he'd started. Seeing those photos, it was like seeing myself clearly for the first time. Lilith reached across the table and squeezed his hand. What do you want to do? Elias took a deep breath. I want to try living as her, as the person in those photos. We can do that, Lilith said without hesitation. We'll take it one step at a time. That afternoon, they went shopping. Lilith guided him through stores he'd never have entered alone, helping him select items that aligned with the Gothic aesthetic he'd been drawn to. Black velvet skirts, corsets, lace tops, more platform boots. What about a name? Lilith asked as they walked home, bags swinging between them. If you want one. Elias had already been thinking about this. Sienna, she said softly. I've always liked that name. Lilith nodded. Sienna it is. The transition wasn't immediate or without challenges. There were awkward moments of learning to apply makeup, of practicing a different way of speaking, of explaining to confused friends. But with each passing day, Sienna felt more real, more authentic than Elias ever had. 2 months after the initial photo shoot, Sienna sat at the same vanity, applying her own eyeliner with newfound confidence. Her blonde hair had grown out a bit, softening the lines of her face, and she'd become adept at styling it to frame her features. Today, she wore a black velvet skirt with a deep purple top, her signature colors now. Ready for round 2? Lilith asked from the doorway, camera in hand. Sienna smiled, the dark purple lipstick perfectly applied. More than ready. This photo shoot was different. Where the first had been about transformation, this one captured something else. Acceptance, perhaps. Joy. The freedom of finally being who she was meant to be. When the shoot was done, they scrolled through the photos together. These are beautiful, Lilith said softly. You look happy. I am, Sienna replied, and it was true. The person in these photos wasn't playing a role or fulfilling a bet. She was simply being. What happens now? Lilith asked. Sienna looked up from the camera. Now I keep going. This isn't a phase or an experiment anymore. This is me. And it was. In the months that followed, Sienna embraced her identity fully. She grew out her blonde hair, developed her own style, still Gothic, but with her own touches, and began to build a life that felt genuine. Some relationships faded. Not everyone understood or accepted her change, but new ones formed. Lilith remained her constant supporter, her first and most loyal friend in this new life. The tiny apartment that had once housed Elias and Lilith now belonged to Sienna and Lilith, and somehow it felt more like home than ever. 6 months after that first photo shoot, Sienna stood in an art gallery, surrounded by Lilith's photographs, displayed on stark white walls. An entire section was devoted to her transformation, from that rainy afternoon when Elias had reluctantly submitted to a makeover to the confident woman Sienna had become. What do you think? Lilith appeared at her side, dressed in her gallery opening best, a structured black dress with dramatic red accents. "It's strange," Sienna admitted, studying the progression of images. "To see it laid out like this, to see him become me." "Not become," Lilith corrected gently. "Reveal! You were always there, underneath." Sienna nodded, touching the black choker at her neck, the same one from that first day, now a talisman of sorts. "I never thanked you properly for making me face this." "You did all the hard work!" Lilith bumped her shoulder affectionately. "I just took the pictures." "Well, they're beautiful pictures." Sienna gestured around the gallery. "You should be proud." "I am." Lilith smiled. "Of the work, yes, but mostly of you." The exhibition was a success, drawing attention not just for the artistic merit of the photographs, but for the story they told. Sienna found herself answering questions, explaining her journey to curious strangers who saw something of themselves in her transformation. Later that night, after the last guests had left and they were helping the gallery staff clean up, a young woman approached Sienna. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For being so visible. I've been afraid to be myself for so long, but seeing your photos, it gave me courage." Sienna hugged her, recognizing the fear and hope in her eyes. "The hardest part is taking that first step," she said. "But I promise, it gets easier." As they walked home under a sky full of stars, Sienna realized how far she'd come from that rainy day when she'd lost a bet. What had seemed like bad luck had turned out to be the most fortunate turn of events in her life. "What are you thinking about?" Lilith asked, linking her arm through Sienna's. "How sometimes the universe knows what we need before we do," Sienna replied. "How losing can actually be winning in disguise." Lilith laughed. "Does this mean you'll finally stop accusing me of cheating at poker?" "Never," Sienna grinned. "But I might thank you for it someday." 1 year to the day after that first photo shoot, Sienna stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom, assessing her reflection. The blonde hair that now fell past her shoulders, the curve of her waist in the black corset top, the confident set of her shoulders, all of it felt right in a way nothing had before. Her phone chimed with a text from Lilith. "Meet me at the cafe in 20. Got news." Sienna grabbed her purse and headed out, enjoying the familiar click of her platform boots on the sidewalk. The cafe was their regular spot, a cozy place with mismatched furniture and excellent espresso. Lilith was already there, waving excitedly from a corner table. "What's the big news?" Sienna asked, sliding into the chair across from her friend. Lilith pushed a glossy magazine across the table. "Page 42. Sienna flipped to the page and gasped. There, in a feature on emerging photographers, was one of Lilith's photos, of her from that very first shoot, gazing out the rain-streaked window. "They're offering me a solo exhibition," Lilith said, her eyes bright with excitement. "In New York, and they want the full series, your whole journey." "Lilith, that's amazing." Sienna reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "You deserve this." "There's more." Lilith took a deep breath. "They want you there too, to speak about the experience. They're calling it visual metamorphosis, identity through the lens." Sienna sat back, stunned. "Me? Speaking in New York?" "Who better?" Lilith shrugged. "You lived it. And you're eloquent as hell when you talk about identity and authenticity. The thought of standing before a crowd, sharing her story, was terrifying and exhilarating. When is it? 3 months from now. Lilith sipped her coffee. Say yes. We'll go together. Take New York by storm. Sienna looked down at the magazine, at the image of herself in that moment of discovery. Yes, she said. Let's do it. The preparation for the exhibition consumed the next few months. Lilith selected images, worked with the gallery on presentation, gave interviews to art publications. Sienna wrote and rewrote her speech, determined to honor her journey and, hopefully, inspire others. The night before they left for New York, Sienna found herself in Lilith's room, looking at that first dress, the black lace with purple accents, now hanging preserved in Lilith's closet. I'm bringing it, Lilith said from the doorway. For the exhibition. Full circle, you know. Sienna nodded, running her fingers over the delicate fabric. It seems so long ago now. Just a year. Lilith came to stand beside her. Though I guess a year can change everything. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd won that poker game? Sienna asked. Lilith considered this. I think we'd have gotten here eventually. Maybe not as quickly, but this, she gestured to Sienna, was always waiting to emerge. I just gave you a nudge. Some nudge. Sienna laughed. You pushed me off a cliff. And look how well you've learned to fly. New York was a whirlwind of activity. The gallery was in Chelsea, sleek and modern, with high ceilings and polished concrete floors. Lilith's photographs were arranged chronologically, telling the story of Sienna's emergence from those first tentative poses to the confident woman she'd become. The opening night drew a larger crowd than anyone had anticipated. Critics, artists, collectors, and people who had followed the story online when the initial photos went viral, all packed into the space, glasses of champagne in hand, moving from image to image. Sienna wore a new outfit for the occasion, a structured black dress with lace overlay, purple accents at the waist and hem, and her signature platform boots. Her blonde hair was styled in loose waves, and her makeup was impeccable, skills she'd honed over the past year. Ready? Lilith appeared at her side, looking elegant in a tailored black suit with a deep red shirt. As I'll ever be. Sienna took a deep breath. The gallery director clinked a glass for attention, introduced Lilith, who spoke briefly about her artistic process, and then it was Sienna's turn. Standing before the crowd, looking out at all those expectant faces, Sienna felt a moment of panic. Then, her eyes fell on the first photograph, Elias by the window, rain creating tears on the glass, and she found her voice. A year ago, I lost a bet, she began, and the audience chuckled. My roommate, Lilith, insisted on giving me a makeover for her photography project. I was reluctant, afraid, really. Not of looking foolish, though that was part of it, but of what I might discover about myself. She moved slowly along the line of photographs as she spoke, pointing to specific images that marked milestones in her journey. This was the first day I went outside as Sienna, she said, indicating a photo of herself sitting nervously at a cafe table, hands wrapped around a mug. I was convinced everyone was staring, judging. Some were, but most people were just living their lives, too caught up in their own stories to worry about mine. The audience followed her movement, engrossed in her narrative. And this, she stopped at a particularly powerful image, herself standing tall in the rain, face tilted up to catch the drops, eyes closed in a moment of pure acceptance. This was the day I stopped caring what anyone thought. The day I realized that authenticity isn't just about being true to yourself. It's about being brave enough to show that truth to the world. By the time she finished speaking, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. The applause was thunderous. People surged forward to congratulate her, to share their own stories of transformation, to thank her for her courage. Later, as the crowd thinned and the evening wound down, an older woman approached. She was elegantly dressed, with silver hair swept into a chignon and sharp, observant eyes. "That was quite a speech," she said, her voice rich with a hint of an accent Sienna couldn't place. "And quite a journey." "Thank you," Sienna smiled. "It's been educational." "I run a foundation," the woman continued, handing Sienna a business card. "We fund various projects related to identity, expression, and human rights. I'd like to talk to you about possible collaboration." Sienna looked down at the card, then back at the woman. "What kind of collaboration?" "We sponsor speaking tours, educational programs. We help people tell their stories." The woman gestured around the gallery. "What you and Lilith have created here is powerful. It deserves a wider audience." "I'm not sure I'm qualified." "No one is more qualified to tell your story than you," the woman interrupted gently. "Think about it. Call me when you get back to Seattle." After she walked away, Lilith appeared at Sienna's side. "What was that about?" Sienna showed her the card. "She wants me to, I don't know, become some kind of speaker? Share my story with more people." Lilith grinned. "Told you. You're eloquent as hell." "It's scary," Sienna admitted. "Putting myself out there like that?" "Scarier than what you've already done?" Lilith raised an eyebrow. "Coming out? Completely changing your life? Standing up here tonight?" Sienna considered this. "Point taken." The rest of the New York trip passed in a blur of gallery visits, meetings with Lilith's new connections in the art world, and long walks through the city. By the time they boarded their flight home, both were exhausted but exhilarated. "So what happens next?" Lilith asked as the plane gained altitude, the city lights shrinking below them. Sienna looked out the window, watching New York recede into the distance. I think I want to take that woman up on her offer. Use my experience to help others." "I had a feeling you'd say that." Lilith smiled. "You're going to be amazing." Back in Seattle, life settled into a new rhythm. Lilith's career took off, with commissions and exhibitions keeping her busy. Sienna made that call to the foundation director and soon found herself planning a speaking tour of college campuses across the country. Their apartment, once a temporary arrangement between strangers, had become a home, walls covered with Lilith's photographs, shelves filled with books on art and identity, closets bursting with both their distinctive styles. "Do you ever miss him?" Lilith asked one evening as they sorted through old photographs for Sienna's upcoming presentations. "Elias, I mean." Sienna considered the question seriously. "No," she said finally. "It's not that he wasn't real. He was, but he was like a first draft, an outline of who I was meant to be." Lilith nodded, understanding. "And Sienna is the final copy." "Still being edited," Sienna laughed. "But getting closer to the definitive version every day." The speaking tour began in the spring, taking Sienna to universities from coast to coast. She shared her story, showed Lilith's photographs, and answered questions from students grappling with their own identities. Some nights were difficult, facing skepticism or even hostility, but most were rewarding beyond measure, connecting with people who saw themselves reflected in her journey. Between engagements, she returned to Seattle, to the apartment, to Lilith, who remained her anchor through all the changes. "I got another offer today," Sienna announced one evening, dropping onto the couch beside Lilith, who was editing photos on her laptop. "A book deal. They want me to write my story." Lilith looked up, surprised. "Really? That's huge." "I know. I'm terrified." Sienna kicked off her boots. "What if I can't do it justice?" "You will." Lilith set aside her laptop. "And I'll help. We'll include the photos. Make it a complete record of the journey." Sienna rested her head on Lilith's shoulder, grateful as always for her unwavering support. "You know what's funny? If I'd won that poker game, none of this would have happened." "If you'd won that poker game, I'd have found another way," Lilith said confidently. "Some things are just meant to be." 2 years after that fateful rainy day, Sienna stood in a bookstore, staring at a display of her newly published memoir, Beyond the Bet, Finding Myself Through Losing. The cover featured one of Lilith's photographs, Sienna in profile, her blonde hair catching the light, her expression serene and certain. People filled the rows of chairs set up for the reading. Lilith stood at the back, camera in hand as always, ready to document this latest milestone. As Sienna approached the podium, she caught her reflection in the store's window. The black dress with purple trim she'd chosen for the occasion, a subtle nod to that first outfit. The confident posture, the smile that no longer had to be practiced. All of it felt right. Perfect. "Thank you all for coming," she began, opening the book to her marked page. This story begins with a poker game and a rainy afternoon. And as she read, sharing her journey with yet another audience, Sienna silently thanked whatever twist of fate had led her to lose that bet. Some defeats, she had learned, were actually victories in disguise. Some endings were really beginnings, and sometimes the most authentic self was the one you never expected to discover. In the back of the room, Lilith lowered her camera, watching with pride as Sienna captivated the audience. The photos had started their journey, but Sienna's words, her truth, were carrying it forward. That first makeover had revealed not just a new appearance, but a whole person waiting to emerge. As the applause filled the bookstore, Lilith caught Sienna's eye and smiled. From a lost bet to a found identity, it wasn't the journey either of them had planned, but it was exactly where they were meant to be. Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!